Welcome back. Yesterday, Governor Evers pulled childcare accounts funding back away from a fiscal cliff. The governor allocating $170 million for the program to keep it running at current levels through June of 2025. That money was set to expire this coming January. The federal government began and funded this program during the pandemic to help child care centers stay open. And the money has helped stabilize the system in the face of rising costs and inflation. Now, the governor proposed $340 million for the program, but legislative Republicans eliminated that from the budget, preferring to generate relief to families through tax cuts. Evers does not need approval to spend this $170 million. And we're joined now by Candy Hall. She is the executive director of the Child Care Resource and Referral Center of the Fox Valley. So, Candy, even Governor Evers admits that what he announced yesterday is a stopgap measure. So how will this help?
Well, I think you're right. Like he said, it's not going to fix the child care industry, but it will stop that bleed. It will hopefully stop programs from having to raise their rates. What we're hearing, up to 20, sometimes 30% of what they're already charging without these funds. So hopefully this will be able to stop some of that raising of that rates for the families.
All right, let's talk about that specifically, because you serve 8 counties in Northeast Wisconsin, so you're talking 20 or 30%. Has there been any response today where maybe some of that's been tabled for now because of the announcement from yesterday? And what is 20, 30%? What does that potentially mean for a family when they're dealing with either an infant or a young child or even two?
I've talked to a few providers this morning. Not a lot, because we haven't had a lot of time since the announcement, but a few providers who have said this will definitely help. The plan was already in the works to raise rates. Some have already raised their rates. Rather than raising their rates 20% in January, they did maybe 10% in September or October, and then another 10%. They'll be looking at what that looks like, because we don't know what this is going to look like yet. We know that in the last 3 years, as his press release stated, we had about $650 million over the last 3 years. $170 million is a lot of money, but it's not going to be the same amounts that maybe they've been receiving. So the programs that I talked to, if they're able to keep the amounts that they're getting now, which is half of what they were getting earlier in the year, that would avoid them having to raise their rates in January again. As far as what we're looking at, as far as 20 or 30% of rates, one of the things our CCNRs do is kind of keep data on what the rates are in the communities that we serve. So I have a few of my counties, so I'm just Winnebago's on top here, so I'll just go with Winnebago. So we're talking about infants, so those are 0 to 12 months. The lowest rate is 210 in Winnebago County. The highest is 340. The average being $266 a week in Winnebago County for an infant. So if we're looking at 20% increase of the average of 266, we're looking at 319.
Okay.
An average wage. If you're looking at 20% of the high at 340, you're talking about $408 a week for an infant care. So that can be, and again, each county differs. Some of the smaller counties, Calumet, Waupaca, those rates are a little less. So really, but that gives you an idea as to what a 20% increase, and some have said even 30%, because they raise wages and they have to be able to make that money up somewhere.
This program, Child Care Counts, came during the pandemic, right? And we all know why it was created. But these rate increases that you're talking about, I mean, most people think the pandemic, or believe it's in the rearview mirror. So what other factors are playing into these costs going up? Well,
when the pandemic hit, classrooms were closed, which, this was keeping them afloat, right? They couldn't.
Right.
The business model for childcare is already a broken business model. You already have to charge more than parents can afford to pay, and we know that. But now we're looking at programs that couldn't open classrooms. Then we had the worker shortage, and it's not just childcare. We have a worker shortage in every aspect. So in order to bring people in, they had to raise wages, and that money helped them allowed them to do that. They were able to raise wages using that child care counts money or give bonuses. Many didn't raise wages, they gave bonuses instead. So without that money, or without that money, they aren't able to give bonuses and retain staff, which is what's been keeping staff in the field, or they gave a raise that they can't take back. We need to look at community funding, maybe business buy-in. One of the things I fear is that we hear that there's 170 million going towards childcare, and we forget that there's a lot of work that needs to be done yet. I don't know what the answer is. I wish I did. But we need to continue to have those conversations with communities and businesses and legislators and all of that we've brought to the table. They're at the table now. And now's the time when we need to continue those conversations and understand that this 170 million will stop the bleed for a little while, but it's certainly not going to fix the problem.
Candy, thanks so much for the time.
You're very welcome. Thank you.